It's Traumedy Tuesday. You are listening to Traumedy, the podcast that shows us how to take our pain and play with it. I'm your host, Nancy Norton. I'm a comedian, I'm a former nurse, I'm studying therapeutic humor, and I am also a trauma survivor, and I want you to know you're not alone. That's the main purpose of this podcast, to help people know you are not alone out there. We have been through some stuff. You've been through some stuff. We can show each other how to get through it. This is peer-to-peer learning. I'm not an expert, but I'm a speaker. I talk about the power of humor, why we need it, why it should be a higher priority. Humor helps us heal. It bonds us with others. It gives us resilience and much, much more. Make humor a higher priority in your day and see the results yourself. My guest this week is Liz Glazer. She's an award-winning comedian, a writer, and an actor. And she was very patient with me because I kept getting dyslexic on time zone. She lives on the East Coast, and I just kept transposing and getting goofed up on our schedule. And she is very courageous as she takes on a very difficult subject, the stillborn birth of her daughter. A lot of people would say that might be the hardest topic, the death of a child. And again, not necessarily making light of the death, but finding humor around the situation. If you've suffered the tragic loss of a child, I hope that this episode helps you know that you're not alone.
Hi. Okay, we got it.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Nancy. How are you?
I'm doing well. First of all, just thank you so much for rescheduling 3 times because man, that
I've done that before.
Have you done that?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Well, because I was between LA and New Jersey for 3 years because Karen and I, that's my wife, were dating when I lived in LA. And I was used to going one way with it, but then if I went the other way for an appointment or a phone call or whatever, I just always got it wrong. So I really, really relate.
Okay,
and it's like, of course, no big deal.
Okay. Welcome to Traumedy. My guest this week is Liz Glazer, an award-winning comedian, writer, and actor. And I consider you a friend, Liz, because I met you in 2019?
Yeah. And you loaned me $20. That's the first thing that ever happened between us, Nancy.
That's why I'm calling you.
Yeah, right. I did. I paid you back on Venmo.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I can't remember why maybe I just didn't have cash. And why did we need cash? I needed $20. And and you loaned me $20. And I was thinking about that because I knew I'd talk to you. So thanks for loaning me $20.
Well, that's interesting that you remember that. I have no memory of that. I have no memory of that. You know,
there's no reason for you to remember it because first of all, I mean, I paid it back. It was like a done transaction within 5 minutes.
Like a Venmo kind of thing?
Yeah. Like I needed cash, you had cash, and then I Venmo'd you right away. So like from your perspective, I could see forgetting it. I wish I remembered why, but I do remember that I needed it. It might have been for parking.
You know what came to me was parking. Because I feel like the night we met, we were, so let's just say we were in the Seattle International Comedy Competition together.
Which you won.
Oh,
and won
by the way.
Such flying colors. And it was so obvious from the beginning. It was so wonderful to watch you, truly. And I remember because you were just coming off of winning Boston and then you won Seattle. And it was just like, I mean, it's wonderful to watch someone who do well. And at that point, I mean, I was watching someone who had loaned me $20 do well. So I consider that a friend, but then we became friends.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, you're very generous to speak of me that way. And I want to just say thank you. And it feels good. I'm smiling because I have been doing comedy so much longer than most of the people in these competitions. But
sure.
I mean, the reason I did those competitions, honestly, was because I never got to fruition of doing a late night talk show and still have not. Like when I started back in my day, the Tonight Show was a big deal. And as a kid, my parents let me stay up. I knew from 4 years old, I'm like, I'm going to do that. I really knew it. And I had no idea how to do it. I was a late bloomer. I mean, you and I both have different careers. I was a registered nurse, and you were a lawyer and a tenured law professor before.
True. Yes.
So I came into it at 27 when I was helping people through the dying process as a hospice nurse. It hit me really hard. Like, I am going to die, because you have that immortality thing in their 20. And, and then I was like, oh, I am going to die. What do I wish I had done? Because I was a good nurse. I have 5 generations of nurses behind me a lot of imprinting, I am a healer. I do believe that. Now I'm healing with humor and got the call. And then what about you? How did you get the call to do comedy? What called you?
Well, so, I mean, what's sticking out to me just from the jump is the 27, which was not when I started comedy. I started comedy at 33, but I started teaching law at 27. And so when you said 27, I was like, oh, that's interesting. 27. There's all the people who like kill themselves at 27. That's a thing, like the 27 club.
The forever 27.
Right. So, which is obviously, very unfortunate, but it's interesting that time period. So for me, at that time, I started teaching law. I had been a practicing lawyer for a couple of years, just out of law school, wanted to teach or like thought I wanted to teach. And it's not to say, because just like you say, you're a healer as a nurse and you're also a healer as a comedian. I think I taught as a teacher and also as a comedian. Like there's not that much of a difference. It's just the fact that like at the end of your set, there's not like a test and nobody needs to remember something. And you know what I mean? But like ultimately you are putting out information that resonates for them, which is what you're doing as a teacher. And you've got the stuff that you want to say, which is the same as in class, which is like, it might not be what your soul is calling you to say as it is maybe in comedy or other art forms, but like, I would go into class. I had like, okay, here's what's on deck for class. And then I had to figure out how to make it relevant to them and how to get their attention and how to hook them in. And I think that that's similar in comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. A direct application right there.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I get it now, because a lot of times we're talking about here's something that happened to me or here's something that I have a strong opinion about, but it doesn't mean that everybody in the audience or even anybody in the audience has the same experience or opinion, but they may be able to hook into something, which is why I think in both law and comedy, I don't know about nursing, obviously, because I don't know about nursing, but there's analogies. Like that's the game, is like figuring out like, when you're XYZ, right? Like it's the same thing in law school, where you're constantly thinking of analogies and hypotheticals, because the thing is that then the general principle applies independent of the analogy. Right?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought, ooh, this is going to challenge me today. I've got to have another sip of Earl Grey tea to stay sharp. And I wish I had taken my morning Adderall.
Oh, really?
No, just because I'm like, okay, Nancy, you have got to stay really present because I'm a lot of times, I'm in my body environment and I'm a little bit lazy at this age, but absolutely it makes sense. So it transfers the philosophy of it transfers to any discipline. And that's where we're trying to find these, like you said, I like that you mentioned XYZ, which also brings up the XYZ axis. And we're finding these intersecting points, right?
Yeah.
Where do we intersect? Of course we have differences. And that's often the launching point of stand-up where here, and that's why a lot of people start with like, and I don't know how this lands with you as a lesbian. I think we can safely say, you are identified as a lesbian. You have a wife, or is that true? I don't even want to tell you what you are. Are you?
Yes.
You are self-identified as a lesbian, which I was for 20 years, and then and now I'm more. I call myself an omnisexual. I don't even know. I'm barely sexual, is what I should be. That's barely. I have not had sex in so long. And that joke, I hate to say that my act is self-fulfilling prophecy, but it was a joke when I wrote the bisexual joke. But I tell you what, my subconscious knew stuff was coming. It has been.
That's so
My joke
interesting.
about being a bisexual, bisexual, having sex every 3.14159 years. And it has been over 3 years, I have to say. So
Wow.
I'm a little rusty.
Interesting. Sure.
Yeah, this is the longest stretch of, I don't want to say celibacy. I will just say longest stretch of not having a sex partner in my adult life. But hey, okay. You don't need that. I don't know. I'm just saying it's interesting
I'm happy to receive the information for sure. Well, and I think, that does happen. I'm trying to think of a specific example, which isn't coming to mind right now, of like, a joke and then it becomes that. But I get it.
Well, and sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, when we did the Seattle International Comedy Competition, and there were, and the thing I'm so sensitive about in comedy is I will watch all the other acts. I always do because at this point I have enough material where we don't need to duplicate stuff or even a word. I don't like a specific word like lesbian. There were two other comics. I think was it Mike DeVore, or DeVore?
Yes.
How does he say his name?
Yeah.
DeVore. He did a joke about looking like a lesbian, right? Because he wore the big flannel shirt, and then you are an out lesbian, and then I'm like, and I'm doing jokes about being a retired lesbian, and I was like, oh, this is a lot of lesbian on the show, which is good in one way that where the word, at least, because in my day, back in the 90s when I came out and on Evening at the Improv in 1994, I keep saying it because I want points for it, man, because it was before Rosie O'Donnell came out. It was before Ellen DeGeneres. And anyway, but the point is now that's a cool thing because we used to be sort of considered ourselves a little bit invisible as lesbians. And so, okay. But I remember it forced me to write a joke because that where I can't remember, we were up north of Seattle at a restaurant bar place. And that night, I remember I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to pull out all the tricks, from doing the one-nighters. And then you went up right before me and I was like, back-to-back lesbians. And then I did that thing where you lock elbows back to with somebody's back when they're, and then I was doing this thing, like whenever somebody searches, because I guess lesbian porn is very popular. I was like, nobody is searching back-to-back lesbians in their, and when I was doing that little seesaw thing, I don't know, it made me giggle. But on a subconscious level, I think what I want to get at with Traumedy, what we do naturally as comedians is take our pain and play with it. And so there is a little bit of pain there because people objectify us as women, as lesbians. Because I used to do this joke. Like when I came out, I would say half the people are disturbed and the other half are trying to picture me with their wives. And it said a lot and it got a big laugh that I actually expressed a lot of tension because this was the 90s. This was the mid 90s. And I was on one-nighters in tiny towns in Texas and Montana and sometimes getting threatened in the parking lot afterwards.
Wow.
And it was kind of intense, but I was like a lesbian missionary. I was on a mission. Everybody needed to meet the lesbian next door. Anyway. Anyway, that might be why my career has been on a very gradual rise. It's okay. We all have our mission. Hey, so here's, okay. Liz, what touched my heart and soul is your comedy around the loss of your child. And I want to tiptoe in here because it's so delicate. And for me, I've had miscarriages and the biggest loss of, thank you. It's such a private loss sometimes. And I'm loving that you're bringing things to the surface. And I have in the last couple of years, more than that, probably been able to play with that pain in a way that might feel outrageous to some people, but folks that are like you and me who that's what we do. It's understandable. Doesn't mean I don't have reverence for my loss. It means this is how I care.
Yeah. Well, I think also that I find it interesting that people go right to saying that having humor around loss is irreverent, because I wish to take issue with that. I don't think it is. I think that it can be, right? Like there are situations in which, like, if you're, going up to someone and be like, sticking your tongue out and putting your thumbs in your ears and saying like, nah, you lost somebody, then that's like making fun of somebody's loss, right? But like, I think in many instances, and certainly this was something that I thought a lot about as I was putting together the hour that would become a very particular experience, which was my album that came out about the stillbirth of my and my wife's first daughter, Leo Pearl, of blessed memory. And also, I talked about other griefs or grieves, I guess, in there. I think it's griefs. I don't know. But
the plural, are you looking?
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
What's the plural? Well, I mean, the thing is that, so we lost our daughter, our first daughter, because she was stillborn. And that was something, that we didn't know until we went to the hospital and she was delivered stillborn. And it was like, obviously hugely tragic and sad, and also confusing because I think, like, for me, I had lost my father during the pandemic, not of COVID, which is the no homo of dying during the pandemic. That is a joke. But, it was sad to lose my dad, right? But he was 73 years old. He had died of heart disease. It was not like, it was surprising in the moment that he died. But like, when I was thinking about his life, I was able to like call upon memories. And when I missed him, I missed certain qualities about him and ways that he would be in life. And I didn't have that when I was experiencing the loss of our stillborn daughter, for obvious reasons, because she never lived. She did exist, but what does it mean to live, to exist, but not to live? And so it not only was like sad, but it also called up these like existential questions about the nature of life and the nature of love and the nature of grief that I really had and felt like I had a lot to say about, not only because I experienced that loss of Leo, but also because I had experienced it at around the same time that I experienced the loss of my dad, and then also the loss of our cat, Mona. And so those two, Mona and my dad, examples of other types of grief that I had also recently experienced at around the same time, I had material around, I had jokes around, and I was able to, construct a narrative where those were kind of like other types of grief that maybe people listening who might not have experienced pregnancy loss might understand.
Right, of course. Because it is a very sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, because it is such a, I feel it is such a unique experience. Yeah. And I did not take a baby to term. That would be called stillbirth.
Right.
In some ways it's different. Obviously, we don't need to qualify or quantify. But the fact that I could never hold this baby, and that was even in the short time, how far my heart and soul wrapped around this being and anticipation and excitement, and it woke up all that mothering energy in me, and I never got to hold that baby. And it just, that feeling of just, and I did a storytelling about it where I went around holding an imaginary, like, it's such a tiny, at that gestation, I was only 2 months gestation. It's so short, but amazingly how expansive. And I went around with my palm in front of me as if I'm holding this tiny bean size being. Anyway, and then you have this beautiful baby that you see, and she's not alive. And I just know. And did you got to hold her? And
we did. Yeah. So there's, I imagine hospitals may differ, but like where we were, the protocol was like, they put you skin to skin right away with the baby, which is like pretty jarring, I would say. I don't mean that to say it's right or wrong. It's just it's a super weird, tragic moment. No matter, I can't imagine that it's never not in some way. And I also imagine that there are like good reasons to do what the protocols seem to be, which is kind of similar to if you have a baby that's alive, which is where, you get the baby skin to skin kind of right away. And there seems to be protocol too of like, you want to, physically interact with the baby, and they want you to like read to the baby and sing to the baby and take pictures together, which I have a joke about that on the album. But like, it's definitely a weird,
surreal
situation. Right. But I mean, from my wife's and my perspective, I mean, obviously I can only speak for myself, but I think that like, we saw eye to eye on this, that like, we just wanted to do whatever they said because we were so shocked, and we were like, okay, if they, the nurses and everybody at the hospital is saying that these are the things we should do in order for us not to regret it later, then we will. And I actually I kissed Leo, our stillborn daughter, on the forehead. And so I was able to like really feel her skin. And I do remember that moment.
That's beautiful.
So, and yeah, I mean, it's just a super weird thing. Yeah.
I mean, nothing that you could have ever anticipated or prepared for.
Yeah.
And yet, like you said, when you're in shock, your frontal lobe is offline. You just you're just gotta trust the people around you, and I'm glad you had that moment. I mean, I shouldn't say. Well, I'm glad. I guess it sounded like you're glad that you did have that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember it, and it's like, right, it's tough when one speaks of like enormous tragedies to be like, I'm glad or I'm thankful. But yes, I get it. And I am. I mean, I'm not glad it happened.
Obviously. Yeah.
But like, I can appreciate that it happened, and also that there were choices that my wife and I and each of us individually made that we're proud of, including doing the album. To me, that was a big thing. And going back to what we were saying like a moment ago, just on the like humor out of pain, right?
Yes.
Like, I really do think it's so interesting, this business of policing, what it is that we talk about, because I just think that that's like so not okay to do. And I've gotten it from people who have had stillbirths, and they're like, listen, I didn't talk about it for 10 years and I don't think you should talk about it. And I'm like, okay.
I know people project their rules onto us. And that is one of the things I say here is we are not speaking as experts on any one topic. Sure. We are speaking on our own. This is peer-to-peer learning and sharing, and we are sharing our process as individuals. Right. And I am studying therapeutic humor. I'm in a program to get certified in therapeutic humor. And that's my thing right now, is defending gallows and dark humor for nurses, first responders, and people who are, whatever you're coping with your trauma, because we do feel, especially I've noticed this with nurses, because it's a caring profession, like, oh, we shouldn't joke about, I just witnessed this trauma. And when you witness trauma, it's the same as having it. Your mind has vicarious trauma, and your mind and body experience the same way, and you need to express that. So that's part of what I'm doing here. And then the difference that you brought up, if somebody is talking about my trauma, that gets into what is called maladaptive humor, where it is aggressive and divisive and hurtful. And then there's adaptive humor, which is what you're doing, which is expressing your pain, getting it out of your body, mixing the light with the dark and transmuting it, and also putting everything in this bigger perspective so that you can manage and cope and be healthy. Because it does. I mean, you can imagine when grief gets stuck in the body, if it's not expressed, it can become illness.
That's what I think. And I think that when people say that there's stuff that's like, not funny about certain topics, what those people who say that are telling grieving people who may find humor helpful in their grief is that they're not allowed that route to healing. And worse, the people who say this, I think they think they're helping by like decreeing this too soon business. But the joke lands or it doesn't, right? And that's the beautiful thing about comedy, is that there's such a democracy about it. And so, one crowd may not be into something that another crowd is into, and that just, whatever. That's the way of comedy always. So the idea that there's certain topics that are off limits, I think is just like silly. And I also think, and this is what I was saying before, that, a lot of times people will ask me, I didn't say this before, but like, it is also true that people ask me like whether my wife was okay with my doing the album. And I mean, she was more than okay with it. She really was very into it. And part of the reason I think for that is she recognized that the way that I was going to treat the topic humorously was not going to be like disrespectful. So, I spent a lot of times working out the jokes for the album, obviously, but I also spent as much time trying to think of, what do I want to say? Like, not a funny thing, but like, what are these jokes in service of?
Yeah,
right?
I love that. I love that idea. And you and I feel are in alignment with that. There's something in me that needs to, I used to have a little posted about it just said conscious comedy. I don't know. And it is, maybe that is what all comedians are doing. I'm not sure, but I love that you're clear about it, that you're very conscious of it. You're like, what is the message underneath it?
Yeah. I mean, and I think that, in a way I always try to be, but I think for this album specifically, because I knew I was taking on a big, serious, tragic topic. And I also wanted to honor the memory of my daughter and my wife's daughter. And so I was really careful to, be conscious of what I wanted to say. And I didn't want to do the album if it didn't have that kind of message. But I think you're right in a broader sense too, because I got my start in comedy in a way in the law school classroom. I didn't know I was doing it at the time, so it was absolutely not conscious. But when I was 27 years old and I was first on the tenure track, first year of this job where I was like, oh my God, they're calling me professor. I don't know a damn thing. I was so scared out of my mind to have this job that I had. And I get out of class one day, and one of my colleagues, who was a senior member of the faculty, says to me, he's like, Liz, what are you doing in that classroom? It sounds like a comedy club. And it's such a funny memory to have, because at the time I was so horrified. I was like, oh my God, they're going to fire me. They're not going to give me tenure. They're not going to take me seriously, because I was a 27-year-old kid teaching law school. And now I look back at that moment and I'm like, oh my God, why wasn't I taping my sex? Like, if I was, you know what I mean? Like, what could I have possibly been saying? But I think one of the upshots of that story and that moment is like, when I was teaching property law, of course I knew what my message was. I wasn't there planning the jokes. The jokes were not planned and necessarily an afterthought, because what I was there to do was to teach them, the rules of first possession, right? Or the rules of adverse possession, or whatever it was for that day of class, because that was the point. The jokes were just the applesauce that goes with the medicine. Right.
And the contrast perhaps of what you're imagining is in what's in your subconscious about that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about the possession laws, but
just whatever the lesson of the day was.
Yeah, no, I know, but I just am saying, like, if that was an example, behind that, there's this, and this is sort of an overgeneralization about comedy, but to express something that's been unexpressed and that needs, that gets let out. So there's this little tension between the law and who we are, or in the law and how it developed, and that kind of thing. And you just, and comedians just have those natural connections. I mean, if your mind works that way. And I don't know where it comes from. I'm always fascinated. Now this is me. I got to admit, I've been so preachy on this podcast about spirituality, but I've had a big spiritual awakening. I'm in a recovery program for. Oh,
same.
I worked a program for 3 years for codependency. And then I transferred my credits over to adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families. I could do both at the same time, but I just don't. I do one. Right. But that program, working those 12 steps, there has been a spiritual awakening. And I mean, it was profound. Like, I already had a spiritual belief, but the level has gone up exponentially, where I'm having goosebumps all the time, where I feel guided by spirit. And I just feel like humor is a language of God. That is my belief, that is an interface to higher power. I don't understand it exactly, but that's just something that I feel my, whatever those are, the muses, my spirit guides, whatever you want to call it, that it just, I feel, is a gift that comes to help manage tension and stress and trauma. So, hey, one of the things we do is we'll take a bit, if you're willing, and I don't know what if you're allowed to play your clips on this podcast. Like, I don't know if you're under a contract or anything with your album.
Yeah, I think I have to ask the record company.
Oh, okay. Well, so it may not work to play the clip itself, and that's okay. We can just tell people to go listen to your album.
Oh, yeah.
Which the name of it again is
A Very Particular Experience.
And then I saw you on social media posting Stillborn, and somehow I thought that was the name of the album. Is that a track of it, or what is that?
It's not. So I was supposed to record an album at the end of 2021 that was called Born Sorry. And Born Sorry is a punchline of a joke of mine that I was telling at the time. Not that I don't tell it anymore, but like, whatever. That was like a big punchline at the time. And my wife at the time was pregnant with our daughter that would be our stillborn daughter. And so what I was thinking was going to happen with that album was that it was going to be an album full of my wife is pregnant type jokes and me anticipating parenthood. And that was what it was going to be about. And I was going to record it at the end of 2021. Then we had a stillbirth, and that album recording was postponed. And then I recorded on the 1-year anniversary of the stillbirth, this album that would become A Very Particular Experience. But when I was advertising the album recording, I advertised it as Stillborn Sorry, because a lot of the people who ended up being the people who came knew that I was going to record the album Born Sorry. Then we had a stillbirth. So there was this, beautiful, unfortunate, but beautiful pun that was on the table to just add the word still. And then it was like a nod to that prior show and album that wasn't. And also what's true is I'm currently finishing up a documentary about the making of A Very Particular Experience, which was, the album that actually was recorded, the album that my prior desire to record an album became. And that documentary will be called Stillborn Sorry, because in that documentary, there is the story of the Born Sorry album and then the album that resulted. So that makes sense that it's called Stillborn Sorry.
Oh, thank you for explaining that. And have a great feeling about, I know, like you talk about being of service. I know that album and that documentary are helping hundreds or thousands of people who have gone through this process. I know it. It's just a knowing, that I have. Yeah. And I mean, I don't mean to be all omniscient here, but it's just wonderful. Yeah. And thank you for,
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you for taking your pain and being willing to well, share it as, and I know as if you had a choice. I actually was, my ADHD is like filling in the blanks sometimes when I should let you say that, because
Oh, no,
I know that you
I
had
get it.
to. I know that you had to. And it's interesting.
You're right.
It's interesting to me that the birthing of creativity, the birthing of your album and the birthing of your daughter, and both of those being thwarted. And I think that's not a great word. I wish I had a better one. That we're just like crushing loss. And I am so sorry for your loss. And I have not expressed that.
No. I mean,
it's just, there's no words, no words.
Yeah.
But then to take it and say, okay, I have to keep moving. I have to live. And now you have a daughter, another daughter, your second daughter, or do you? She's here.
I mean, we do usually, because both like I through comedy and my wife is a rabbi, and she's also been public about the loss of Leo, our stillborn daughter. We do keep in mind that, like, I don't know, we still say, she's not our firstborn in a way. And we do take the time typically to like give the whole story. I mean, a side note on that, I think that that's the thing that's so interesting to me about pregnancy loss is that like the people that we believe we're burdening in not talking about it are like other people in a conversation. And it's kind of like, whatever, you know what I mean? Like I think that there's just this discomfort around the multitudes of emotions and waves that exist in life. Like it is possible for us to welcome our daughter, Eloise, who's now approaching, she's a little over 2 weeks old.
Oh, and she's so tiny still.
Amazing. And it's a wild, amazing, and we feel so lucky and joyous, and like truly the joy of parenting is overwhelming to me. And I feel like it's not, that joy is so present and overwhelming that I don't feel threatened. And I don't think that joy is at all threatened by also acknowledging the pain of loss. And I think that, like, I don't know, it's kind of like sometimes I remember from growing up this idea of like, don't ruin a nice day kind of thing. Like we were having such a nice day.
Oh man, that sounds like my mother. Like I always do this thing with the codependent salute, like from the neck up. Like I have this salute, like, let's keep it here up. Okay. Let's have let's have fun. How are you, Liz? Good or really good? Are you good or really good? And that just like none of this below the neck feeling stuff. That's Nancy. You have a lot of anger, but I understand some people don't know how to manage their feelings, never learned to manage. My mother put her feelings in a box, put them somewhere. I don't know where they were, but they were not present. So and finding your audience, like your audience, the more you are public, the more people know who you are, and they come to see Liz Glazer specifically, which I think you're on the track because you are speaking your unarguable truth, and you are you, and I admire you so much. I'm more of a crowd pleaser. I go into a room and I'm like, oh, what do these people want? I put out my codependent feelers, and I hate to admit it. I hate to admit how good I am at mutating and making it work. And there's a place for that, which is, I feel, when I have this is why I'm doing this podcast, because I can drop in and be my authentic self, which is very complex. And, I can drop in with different people, different ways. But anyway, my point is the more you speak that who you are, Liz, the more you attract that crowd that is like, ooh, we like the range of feelings, and we know that we know to have joy to this level, the joy of a birth. You also have to be willing to feel the grief and the very big heartache, and that range, that people that not everybody is willing to have. Not everybody is.
Right. And I don't know. I just feel that that's like kind of the way, like there's I don't know if you know this show. We've been watching it a ton. It's called Couples Therapy. Do you know it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
What?
It's
Where
so
is
good,
it?
Nancy.
Okay.
It's on Showtime. We watch it either on, you can get it on Hulu with the Showtime add-on, or I think Paramount Plus with the Showtime add-on. And it's this therapist. Her name is Orna Guralnick, and she's a couples therapist. And it's these real couples therapy sessions in a kind of it's a docu series that tracks like what went on with these couples through the course of like, a few, I don't know, 10, 11 weeks, whatever it was, of couples therapy with this therapist. And the therapist herself is amazing. And I want to pull a quote because I don't want to get it wrong. And it was so good. And I can paraphrase it, but I don't want to. Okay. Yeah. People do better with the truth than without it. People underestimate themselves and spend unnecessary energy protecting themselves from truths that they fear will kill them and actually will make them stronger and will make them happier.
Beautiful. Let's take one of your bits off your album, just mentally. Like we'll tell people, hey, go listen to track number what. And then what I often do with comedians, and we've already done it, is with this one is we're just showing the example of what I want to inspire people who are maybe lay people. This podcast is often featuring comedians, but it's for anyone who feels isolated with trauma, stuck with trauma. We're just demonstrating how we take our pain and play with it, and it helps us not be stuck. So which track, if there is there one track that comes to mind in particular, or is it the whole album?
Yeah. I mean, I do think that there's stuff on the whole album. I don't remember the track number. I alluded to this a little bit earlier in this conversation, that there was a joke, really the only like joke about stillbirth that was from the album, which was that it's really true that, like, if God forbid this happens to someone, then they, in the hospital, they, tell you like you should have all of these physical experiences. And it is like a weekend at Bernie's with the baby. And it's like a kind of interesting, weird thing. And so on the album, I say the weekend at Bernie's thing, and I'm like, oh, and if you don't get it, they show you the movie, which isn't really true. And then, if you still don't know what I'm talking about, it's an Oscar-winning film franchise from the early 90s, which if you know the movie Weekend at Bernie's, it absolutely is not. And yes.
And this is, I'm over here going, I'm sure you're like, why is Nancy just leaving me hanging on this joke? Because I have never seen or even know of a Weekend at Bernie's. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I need to watch it. But what is a Weekend at Bernie's?
It's like a silly movie that's like a bro movie. I think there were two of them, and I don't know who the actor is, but it was a guy who in the movie was a dead man.
Oh God.
And
okay.
They like I think it was Andrew McCarthy and somebody else, and he might have like owned the house that they were like in on a vacation in the movie. It was like a kind of like Caddyshack-ish type of movie or whatever. That's from the 80s or the 90s. I don't know. I think early 90s. But in any event, so they would like the whole bit of the whole movie was that this guy was dead, and they would like prop him up and hang out with him and whatever. And
oh my God. So they sort of used him like a prop, but
that's the whole movie. Right. And there was also a Weekend at Bernie's too. And so, whatever. So anyway,
it's just bones or what happened? I don't know, but
I guess it was the same guy. I didn't make it to Weekend at Bernie's too. I did not see that movie. But in any event, like, it's a reference that like generally audiences, when I'm saying that this was what they did, which it really was in the hospital, that reference lands in most situations
most
because people are like,
they've seen it and it's like, the absurdity of interacting with A decedent.
Right.
Yeah, I get
and
it.
so, and then the end of what I say about it is that, in addition to doing all the physical, like hanging out or whatever, they also at the hospital, they asked us, they were like, you really should take pictures as a family. Because like that's part of the protocol. Yeah, exactly. And so, that was like our reaction to it, which was just like, okay, like, I guess we'll do what you say, but like, isn't that kind of weird and creepy and like super sad? And then I felt those things. And then I also felt like, and I'm such a bad person because I'm thinking that it is creepy and sad, but can I tell you that I happen to look amazing in these photos?
Yeah. And now it's
Yeah.
our holiday card. So
right. I'm like, right, exactly. I think what I said I've done different versions of the joke, but I think the one on the album is like, it's going to take a lot to crop this kid out, but I think we're looking at a new headshot, and
yeah.
And then I've told the joke since, and I've added that, like, listen, if you're listening and you're offended by that joke, I just want to remind you that this happened to me and not you. And also that you don't understand how good I looked in these photos. And so,
that's so great, Liz. It really it brings me right back. And I love that it's like, I had needs. I still exist.
Right.
And juxtaposed with this tragedy.
Yeah.
It's just,
and
it's
I think
brilliant.
it also,
that's brilliant. Yeah,
thank you. I appreciate that, Nancy. And I think because it comes, obviously it comes from truth in the obvious ways of this happening, but also it was like interesting to me that I'm such a gross person that even when I'm looking at the photos from this tragic photo shoot, my first thought is, how do I look? Right? Which is like, I didn't even, because I believe that I do that at some sub or unconscious level, literally anytime I'm in a photo at all. Right? And I don't think that that's just me.
No.
But the fact that even in that photo, I'm still like, but hey, did you see what a hair day I was having, or whatever. So anyway, so that's an example.
Oh man. And it says so much in that bit. Like you said, exactly how we're all looking at ourselves in pictures. Hang on. I'm going to cough. Hang on one second. Oh man. It made me laugh. You made me laugh. You made me choke a little bit. So that's a good joke. No, that's a good one. When I inhale my Earl Grey the wrong way. It's a really good joke. And
Thank you.
And it does. And it's I like that it's right next to the tragedy. It's not on the nose. That's one of the things too, where it's like, you don't necessarily make fun of the loss itself. It's sometimes you take concentric circles and you go out until you find the funny, and just showing people how to do that. This is an aside on the other, Yeah. So thank you for demonstrating that.
Of course.
And that's the whole, like I say, this is the main point of this, and also connection and finding those common threads in our lives that I just feel like so many of us, and that's something in our and you said you're in a 12-step program. There's something in our program about, we all think we're very unique, and we are unique beings, but that our experiences are really not that unique. That a lot of us come from a trauma or dysfunctional childhoods that we have adapted to with these survival traits, and humor is one of our tools. And again, if you're not feeling, if you're just using it to escape, that's not healthy. But if you're able to touch in and grieve, but then you have this buoyancy of humor to help I can do it. I can dive in and really feel and cry my eyes out and let my heart feel everything, and then know that I can get resourced with humor, with higher power, or whatever the way you resource.
Yeah. Trying to. I think, part of the thing for me is like everybody has their own different origin story into comedy. But like, I think for me, the thing that was most attractive about it, because I was teaching law at the time that I did comedy for the first time. I was teaching already for 7 years. And I didn't mean to do comedy. Somebody who I admired, I took an improv class, and the teacher from the improv class, who I thought was just like, oh my God, the best. Like, you're so fearless. And I, thought she was amazing, which she is. She was like, have you ever thought of doing stand-up? And I said, no. And then she's like, well, I would put you on my show. I'd give you 10 minutes on my show if you do stand-up. And I still said no. And then she said, well, let me tell you that a lot of people would really want that spot, which now, of course, I know. But at the time, I had no idea. But I knew that I liked things that other people would want.
Yeah, and there's that competitive spirit.
Right. I was like, wait, what? Okay, I'll do it. And like, the thing that was most attractive about it for me was the fact that I could be totally honest. And it would take a while for me to like figure out that just being totally honest is not enough to, it's enough to be a person, but it's like, if you're going to get on stage and do comedy, in order for you to have it go the way that you really want it to go and to get laughs, it's not just about being honest, but I think being honest is a really good start. And so
absolutely, like, beautiful foundation. And then, so if you, and that, okay, sorry, you were in.
No.
And so if that's your foundation, that that authenticity, from there, you can grow your skills to find the funny. And obviously we have to deliver consistently, but that's so cool, because I think a lot of comedians, and I have mentored a few people. I don't find that I'm a very good teacher, but my message when I do mentor, and I've mentored a handful of people, I want to see you fail. That's my first requirement. Because if you're going up there and you're succeeding every time, then I kind of know you're working from the top down. You are kind of maybe stealing.
It's like
you might be stealing material. You might be taking some. Oh, I saw this work, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
and then you work from the funny back down to the authentic part of you. And some people never get. Some people never. I mean, we know this. Some people, that's not their thing. Maybe they're just very clever wordsmiths or. And I know it still has to express something for other people. And I throw a couple of puns in here and there just because I'm a crowd pleaser. I want to like a little something for everybody. But definitely, I love that your premise is it's gotta be true. And then from there, let's find the funny.
Yeah. I mean, and that was like, always a big thing for me. And when this happened, I was like, oh my God, am I, not even as a comedian, but just like, am I ever gonna be funny again as a person? That was a worry for me. And am I ever gonna laugh again? Because everything seems so not funny right when this happened, for obvious reasons, the stillbirth, and then I started thinking, I was like, nobody would ever want this to happen. It's obviously a tragedy. I'm not thankful it happened. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's an interesting like problem for someone to have as a comedian if the reason that they got into comedy is because they wanted to be honest. And that really like caused me to know that I wanted to do the album about it, because I was like, this is exactly the kind of thing that I specifically should do my debut album about, because this is, the thing that happened that's like so scary to be honest about.
And so intense in both directions, the love, the deep love of we fall in love with our child before they're born, and then the extreme loss, and wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And then you and I,
yes.
Wow. I mean, that was a really lame synopsis. Thank you so much for sharing that. But seriously, thank you for dropping in life in general.
Nancy, thank you.
I'm glad you're out there. In closing, I think it's cool that you and I are going to intersect again on the West Coast.
Yes.
We are doing this event together for emergency room nurses.
Excited.
How crazy is this? I'm like, first of all, I want to say, Liz, stay in your lane. What are you doing in my my nursing conferences? And yes, I'm so glad that you're going to be at this nursing conference. So.
Yeah, I'm super psyched. And so I have not done a nursing conference before. I'm very excited. Do you have tips? Because
just know that the nurses. So I do a lot of nursing shows. I do a lot of shows for nurses. I call myself the recharge nurse. I want to help nurses stay at their jobs because we're losing so many nurses right now with burnout. So humor gives you energy, resilience, it helps with job retention. So that's sort of my thing. Is like I want to be a healer for the healers and help them get that stuck energy. What I would tell you is, you don't have to be shy about dark humor. I love when I have my comedian friends on my shows at Comedy Works. I'm like, just know that they are fine. In fact, love the dark humor. They love the gallows humor. They, especially emergency room nurses, are seeing everything. They do have to express that tension and that trauma. So just take it. Do not feel shy about your gallows or dark humor. Liz, thank you. Thank you so much for everything, for sharing. And
really.
I'm looking forward to seeing you out in California.
Same. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I will put in the show notes a link to your album and anything else that you want in there that people can find resources for. Have you found any resources for grieving a stillborn, a book that you've read, anything like that you would want to share?
Totally. I didn't read specifically books about it. There was Irvin Yalom is an author. He had a bunch of books that I listened to that aren't about stillbirth specifically, but they're about grief and loss. But I found, and this is a local thing, so it's not going to be directly applicable, but there was a group locally. There was a bereavement group that was started by a couple that had a stillborn child, and then they went on to have children, live children, as well. But they run an organization called Pockets of Light. But we went to the bereavement group that Pockets of Light offered, and then they also offered a pregnancy after loss group as well that we also went to.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, it was really helpful.
Well, many blessings on your
Thank you, and to you.
On your baby Eloise and on your continued growth as a comedian and partnership with your wife. And
thank you.
Seriously, thank you so much, Liz. And we'll see you in September.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good one, and we'll talk.
You too.
I can never end it. This is my problem. Let's just keep doing this. And you too. No, you too, Liz. I want to thank my guest, Liz Glazer, for sharing authentically as always. And I want to thank my son for putting together the music for Traumedy. And I want to thank the folks that have messaged me to tell me that Traumedy is helping you. And that's enough gratitude for me. And if you happen to be in a position where you would like to support Traumedy financially, I think there's a button somewhere. I don't know how it works with Spotify. They just sent me a message saying your listeners can support you. So I welcome that. I would love to hire a sound engineer because I am doing all the sound engineering, and I don't know. I tend to stay up all night on Mondays so that I can launch this podcast every Tuesday, because it's important to me that it's Traumedy Tuesdays. Something reliable is happening every Tuesday, which is Traumedy.